Hello viewers, my name is Adam.
Yeah, I'm Aaron.
This is Seeking Me Productions, bring you another TV series review.
We finally got to watch it. The end of a great anime series.
Possibly even more. And that is Attack on Titan.
Now, again, it goes without saying, when it comes to a live television series or cartoons or whatnot, we tend to want to save our reservations for our overall feelings of a particular series until we've watched the very last episode. But, and boy, did it take time to get to that point for this one.
Yeah, and even if we are able to catch this series when it originally premiered, we'll probably do a season 1 review for it. But mostly for TV shows, we'll do it for a full series. So, and particularly for the case of in anime, it's very rare where an anime actually gets a full-on ending, like especially if they're long, like the manga continues to goes on.
Exactly, and it's even rarer for it to be able to catch us, or at least our attention, to stick with it as long as we want it as it's being produced, because of that fact.
And so it's nice that we're able to, for one of the most popular shows that came out in the past decade, it's actually finally had its conclusion.
So at the end of the day, what was this roller coaster of a series truly about?
So Attack on Titan is based on the manga by Hajime Isayama. This has been going on the anime came out in 2013 for Japan, 2014 for United States audiences.
It's true.
And it basically had a full decade. For 10 years, across 4 different seasons, this was a post-apocalyptic society, alternate reality.
Yeah, that basically centered itself on a group of survivalists, specifically 3 main characters that we actually get to see grow up and develop throughout this journey. Specifically, we have Eren Yeager, who is also accompanied by with Armin and Mikasa.
And for the majority of the series, it takes place on an isolated island of Paradis. And different types of sections. Just these are sectioned off by different walls, and every time it goes into it, it goes to the capital.
And the reason why they had to live behind these walls and on this isolated island has to deal strongly with the concept of what they are having to face out there in the wilderness. In this particular case, the reason why humanity had fallen in the first place due to these giant, lumbering, humanoid-like creatures that has been known to be, at least called by the locals, as Titans.
These freaking humanoid-like beings.
We cannot stress the fact how freakishly they are.
It's a complete nightmare fuel with a slight absurd twist to them.
Yeah.
But the show takes its matter very seriously.
Oh, incredibly so.
And it's just like, if you're going into it thinking this is going to be like most other big name animes and stuff, this is more...
it has some of those aspects in it, but for the majority of this series, it's hard to watch television. People are eaten, smushed, and stomped on, and killed, and crushed all over the place. I mean, from the very first time you actually see and experience this horror, you're in awe of how horrific it all is.
It ends up being one of the most nihilistic shows out there.
Oh yeah.
But on that's basically just the premise, and for the most part, it does fall through to that. From start to finish.
Exactly.
But it does take the turn once you start getting to the more mysteries of why the world can turn out to be, and with the series continually goes on, not to go too far into what happens for the many twists and turns.
And there are so many to be discovered.
The show does expand upon what is presented, especially beyond this first 3 seasons. And it is said that the show eventually becomes an introspective look into the horrors of humanity, a lot of prejudice, a lot of familiar, heavy subject matter. that deals with it. Like it very akin to like I'll say Japan tends to have Germany has a very specific mind when it comes to pulling stories from it. I'll say that.
I would say the closest anime that comes to mind is Full Metal Alchemist as far as the severity and the world aspects they meld together in this fantasy series. It's some jaw dropping stuff.
Yeah, and luckily the series is well balanced with the many characters that it involves, and I would just say that as the series continues to go on, one of it should have ended a lot sooner than it really did.
Yeah, I would definitely say that.
As far as to wrap up our thoughts on the story, it's just that when we was watching it, the show would take there was a 5-year break between seasons 1 and 2.
True.
And then afterwards, it continued to play for a yearly basis. But until they started dragging out the last season, I don't know how that experience will play out if you were to binge the show.
It probably would feel a lot better in a lot of sense, but at the same time, having to experience it the way that it was drugged out, it definitely felt you felt those hours and minutes tick by, and it has a lot to do with the fact that the conclusions that you end up coming to were things that in some ways it pays off, and the other way it's like okay, this either could have been edited out, or we could have found a different way to wrap it up in a certain particular space, so we wouldn't be here this long.
It does get some preachy moments.
Yeah.
It gets to that. So if you're a fan of that type of stuff, keep it in order or not, but that's what we're going to
That's what you're going to be looking for.
But for characters, the main character that we follow is Eren Yeager.
Well, as far as anime protagonists are concerned, he is unique in the sense of how his character is, what drives his character, and a lot of that ambition comes from the loss that he has suffered, the loss of his mother. The situation that he
comes
had to
from
deal
a
with.
fractured family.
A very fractured family. And then as you see the series go forward, you'll know just how messed up he really is.
It's just that
he's a very angry, driven young man.
I will say that initially, especially before the series goes on, I'm not necessarily fond of this main character as much. In fact, he was very to the point of annoying in a lot of the earlier moments, and still it doesn't really help with how his character direction goes going forward. Until the series ends.
Yeah.
There are inspirations that from other stories where it's understandable how this character went about going the things that he does.
Exactly.
It's just that the first impressions is not really good. It's not really his strong suit.
And then you have his entourage, starting off with Mikasa, an individual who's pretty much a favorite addition to his family that came into his life. But at the end of the day, they have a very unique bond that has developed between the two of them, and it comes straight down to how she actually presents herself in the story as well.
She, for the most part, on one hand, she's can easily be a fan favorite because of how she's one of the show's strongest heavy muscle when it comes to the action. But her major flaw is such a obsession towards the main character.
Yeah, it got to points where it was almost cringe in a lot of ways. And cringe in a way is not necessarily funny cringe where you come across something that's okay, you could just move on. We get it. This is how you are with each other. But at the same, no, it was getting to the point where it's it's like a very toxic relationship situation. It was okay, no, red flags were long showed, and we really need somebody to step in.
Yeah. And trying to hold this little trio together is Armin, the third best friend in this situation.
Very much feels like the third wheel in any kind of relationship. But at the same, it's I feel as though Armin's part in this whole story is very much the audience perspective, eyes and ears, and he really is the individual that steps in as us in this story.
Just from a bigger distance. His character does grow into a leadership type role in fashion, very positively so. with especially with we come to know that he's come to be a very strategic mind. So that balanced it out with Mikasa and Aaron's toxic
Strong
situation.
emotional relationships.
But another favorite character is Levi.
Oh yeah, I love Levi from the moment he was introduced, and then actually getting to see this man move into action. My God,
You know the budget was increased every time he's on screen.
you know it.
But like the no nonsense type character of Levi. He is easily to say why he's very liked. And accompanying him usually is Zoe Henge.
Oh yeah,
She's a very integral character for the show.
she's your eccentric, scientific mind kind of individual, something akin to the. Anime tropes of super highly intelligent individuals in this situation. Not even just anime, just stories in general. When you have somebody like
her curiosity was very compelling to watch.
It is,
and especially when she's very important when unfolding the many secrets that the show eventually unfolds.
It was interesting to see how she was able to come to certain conclusions or actually found out certain things. It was interesting.
A character that comes a little bit later, midway to the series, earlier second season, is the character of Zeke. Not to spoil too much about his character, but one of the things that this show does have, just to slip one thing, if you're not playing, if you want to watch the series, is the fact that people are able to harness
the powers that comes from these giant lumbering monstrosities known as Titans. And when you look at it through from the perspective of how Zeke's able to do it, it's very much plays into the concepts of the horrors that humanity brings upon itself and what they strive to try, flee from. He's very much a individual that plays into the concepts of how far does one goes to make amends or to find a path that services everybody.
And it's just that when it comes to two sides fighting for a somewhat common goal, Zeke is very much on the extremist side, and we'll learn how different other characters fall into place on that spectrum as well. There's one character that is unfortunate to have almost a character assassination happen. Is the character of Historia.
I was really enjoying where they were going with this character as far as her storyline was developing. You really actually see like some of the earlier main group of characters that you're introduced to. Historia's storyline is one that you really got to see develop in an organic sense, but unfortunately at a certain turning point in the story, she's completely dropped.
The show does it's not as unfortunate. The show does a time skip after it was in the season 4 area,
and she's almost completely rented out the story altogether. And that was so unfortunate for the brilliance that was right behind her. Like literally, her storyline was one that could have went down in anime history, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, but unfortunately they introduced a slew of other new characters.
And they ended up having to go right back to the main characters, the main trio, trying to wrap up the story from their point of view perspective. It's a whole thing.
Well, luckily enough, the series production is solid on a very salient point. This show had 2 major studios. The first 3 seasons, it was produced by Studio Wit.
Yes, and from their perspective, I mean, you can't sing high enough praises for how well this show was animated and presented. It was something to really be shocked and awed by, and I love the fluidity that they was able to bring in almost every action scene that they actually presented, and not even just the action scenes, the dramatic scenes as well.
The show is one of the few animes that actually for the aesthetic, it's very close to how the manga looks like.
Yes.
As far as that, with the very harsh, very strong black lines that exaggerates very strong emotion.
Exactly. And it feels raw and emotional, and it's strong in its presentation. It feels amazing being able to see it in that sense.
And then that's for the first 3 seasons. The show takes the show is taken over by Studio Mappa, where some of that detail is like softened.
Yeah,
because the show is like came to high gear with a lot more of the Titans
and huge
action
battle sequences that that was floating around, and battle sequences that ended up into huge war sequences as well. And you understand why they had to go in certain directions. And for the most part, it still stayed true to what it was supposed to be able to bring and what you were accustomed to. But it did have its unique touches, i.e., with certain designs of the Titans, where it was originally in a traditional animated sense. They changed it up to be a situation where it's almost like a 3-dimensional aspect to a ratio concept, and
it takes a minute to
get
used to it.
And I want to say you'll notice it at first when it's actually first brought to you, but then as the series goes forward, you do end up getting used to it, and it's not too much of a situation where it distracts you from what you were actually enjoying.
It probably helps with that it was able to have some breaks in between, so they can at least finish out those renders and stuff to be a lot more solid and less distracting.
Exactly.
Music on the show, most of the show is composed by Hiroyuki Sawano,
and it's very much a huge epic orchestral presentation on just the sheer awe and power that each scene and moment brings towards this story.
The show has uses a lot of balance of lyrical songs in the background music. It's almost, it gives off like an operatic type of tone to the show, especially with the very high emotions that it comes with.
And you can't sing enough high praises for those openings and those endings. I mean, my God,
the openings for the show are instantly among the best in the anime. And the thing is, they're consistent.
Yes.
That well.
I don't think they actually really had any one that I would say it was bad. I definitely have my favorites.
Yes. The first one is instantly that's the most iconic one, and I feel as though they're not as bad because, like, at least for the first early ones, they're basically like a variation of the first opening. Besides one, and then once season 4 happened, it does there is a shift, but still similar tone with especially with, but the thing is, you can't really get mad at it when your openings, the rumbling, ends up being like the one.
I think it broke. It was one of those few animes moments that literally broke the internet at some point. I was like, and it definitely deserved
the Billboard top 10, top 100, and
it deserved to.
So despite a little bit dragging out, like near the end, and like one major character getting like the short end of the stick. Attack on Titan is still one of the better shows out there, especially with the end. If it actually gets an ending, that I'm glad to say that for all things good, maybe if a binge, if I were to go ahead and binge the show and see if the pacing of the show is better in that regard, I would say that the show would have been amazing. But for me, because we did experience it as it was airing, it's great.
I would say the same thing. It's just a great series. Definitely one that you don't want to skip. You definitely if you're a fan of anime, you're a fan of great storytelling, this is definitely one of those shows that you definitely need to watch and actually absorb for yourself. It definitely could have been better, especially towards the end, but for what we got and how it was presented to us, it was great.
So, my name is Adam.
And I am Aaron.
This has been a Seeking Media Production. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and comment below. What other animes do you wish that we would discuss with? And are you a fan of the, how did you feel about the ending of this show?
I know we all got our own opinions, but definitely I'm still going over some aspects that they went around with in this story. I don't know if it's if I agree with the way they ended it, but at the same time, it's like, Okay.
And also look at our social media outlets of Twitter, X, Facebook, Instagram, and also Letterboxd.
Yeah, exactly. Because, there's only so many hours left in the day and not enough time to do it because, life be life.
Again, thank you for watching.
See you later.